this. Look at this, 215 members now have voted in favor, including 9 Republicans, and that's very significant. The last time, as you and I well remember, the president was impeached, President Trump was impeached. No Republicans voted in the House in favor of impeachment, but already 9 have voted right now.
Right. One independent, Justin Amash, who had just left the Republican Party, did vote to impeach the president.
Here it is. Here it is right now. 217 has just been reached. We've just witnessed a truly solemn moment in American history. The House of Representatives has reached the threshold for making Donald J. Trump the only president of the United States to be impeached for a second time. Unlike his first impeachment, this is a bipartisan vote. At least 9 Republicans agreeing with Democrats that this president poses a threat to U.S. national security and to democracy, that he incited the riot at the U.S. Capitol by repeatedly lying that he won the election and by urging his supporters to, in his words, fight like hell. As he heads into the final week of his term, the 45th president of the United States now is poised to face trial in the United States Senate. And there you see the numbers. We'll show the numbers up on the screen one more time, but this is a truly historic moment. Now 225 votes in favor of impeachment, and 10 Republicans, as you can see, have now voted in favor of impeaching the president of the United States. Jake, this is something that we anticipated would happen, but 10 Republicans joining the Democrats is very significant.
It is the first bipartisan impeachment of President Trump, though it is his second impeachment. But I do have to say, as historical as this moment is, I think 1 week ago was even more historical, because that was the time, that was the day that we all witnessed the President of the United States and his supporters, including Donald Trump Jr. and Rudy Giuliani and others, inciting a mob to stage a domestic terrorist attack on the U.S. Congress, in which 5 people were killed, including a U.S. Capitol Hill police officer, and subsequently at least 2 individuals, including a police officer, have committed suicide. It's a solemn moment, Dana. It's not anything that's fun to report on any of this. Absolutely not. I mean, if you think last Wednesday, this horrific, unthinkable attack on the United States Capitol while they were trying to do their constitutional duty. It is literally written in the day and the time that they certified the Electoral College is written into the Constitution. They were attacked. Today, a week later, the president is impeached in a bipartisan way. Again, only 10 Republicans, but that's 10 more than we saw the last time. And then a week from today, next Wednesday, President Biden will be President Biden at 12 o'clock, again, as prescribed by the Constitution. These 2 weeks are mind-numbing. And, you know, we always knew going into the 2020 election cycle that if, in fact, Joe Biden won, it was going to be a dramatic end to the Trump presidency. Nobody could have imagined it like this, with people dead, with blood on his hands, because of his absolute refusal to accept the reality and the fact. I mean, they didn't even talk in this very limited article of impeachment about the fact that it was just a couple of weeks ago that he called up the Secretary of State of Georgia and asked him to find votes. I mean, the length to which he went to bust through the free and fair election, it is really remarkable. And again, the fact that he dragged the party and dragged his supporters along with him in a way that ended up so violent is something that we all will never forget and probably never believe.
So many lines crossed, so many norms just completely shattered in this transition period. And I think looking back, we all knew this was not going to be a typical transition. But I think, as you said, Dana, nobody could have anticipated that we'd be sitting here today talking about an insurrection on the Capitol and 5 people dead. And of course, President Trump planning to be absent from the inauguration activities next week, as frankly he probably should be, considering what he incited last week. But this is a moment for the country where so many things that we have taken for granted about this process of transferring power from one person to another have been really turned on its head in this Trump era. And it's a real challenge for this country to pick up the pieces from here. What is troubling about even the 10 Republicans who have joined the Democrats in voting for impeachment is that there is no consensus among an entire political party in our system that what happened last week was so wrong that it deserves to be deterred and it deserves to be condemned. There is not consensus on that. And that's going to be an issue for this country in the future. I don't know whether Donald Trump is going to end up being a candidate in 2024, a twice impeached president trying to come back onto the stage, or whether he will be convicted and prohibited in a vote from holding office again. But clearly, the Republican Party has not abandoned Trumpism.
Right.
And that remains a real force in our political world right now.
And as I throw to Anderson, I want to say I agree with your arguments, Dana and Abby, that no one could have predicted exactly what happened. But I will say, Anderson, we've all been covering Donald Trump inciting violence since he ran for president. One of the questions I asked him at the debate in Miami in 2016 was whether he would agree to lower the temperature. There was Cesar Sayoc, his supporter, who sent pipe bombs to members of the media and to Democratic politicians. There was El Paso. There was the Tree of Life Synagogue. There was Charlottesville. There have been many, many times that President Trump has been inciting violence one way or another. This was just the most direct such tragedy. Anderson?
The Michigan State House encouraging, praising men who burst into the Michigan State House with long rifles, getting the face of police officers, shouting down elected officials. That was in many ways a dry run, perhaps, for what we later saw at the Capitol.
100%.
Yeah, Jake, thank you for your coverage. We'll come back to you very shortly. I want to bring in Gloria Borger and David Axelrod. We're waiting for the gaveling in to actually the reading out of the final results. 219 Democrats, 10 Republicans voting to 221. It's now gone up. 10 Republicans voting to impeach the president. Gloria Borger, the history of what we're seeing, and when you consider what you're not seeing right now on camera is all the National Guard troops who have been sleeping in the halls of Congress, who are now stationed all around a lockdown Capitol Hill area, armed members of the National Guard.
Yeah, inside that chamber, you don't see it, although you do see members in masks now. And outside, it is like an armed camp. I can attest to that. Coming up to CNN on Capitol Hill, I know what I saw, and it was frightening to me, quite honestly, Anderson. What we've just witnessed is, as we've all said, he's the first president in history to be impeached twice. But this happened at warp speed. It isn't as if Democrats woke up and said, wouldn't it be a great idea to impeach Donald Trump before he leaves office? They did not do that. They were the witnesses to the insurrection, and today they became the judges. And what they said, along with, 10 Republicans, what they said is enough is enough. We have to stand up. We have to say something. This might not be politically helpful to a lot of people because the Republicans, on the other hand, said, look, you guys just want to cancel Trump, as Congressman Jim Jordan said it. That misses the point. This isn't about canceling Donald Trump. This was about saving democracy as we know it. And I don't think, quite frankly, the American public got the real debate that they deserved because there were very few Republicans who stood up, you can count them on one hand, who said this was a free and fair election. The president's statement today did not say that. And I think that is what the public needs to hear to reassure them that democracy survives.
And I should point out, David, before we hear from you, it is now 231 votes to impeach, 10 Republicans on record. We're still waiting to hear from 4 Republicans on this. So we continue to watch that, and we'll bring you the gaveling in when it happens. But David, what has stood out to you?
Well, look, I agree with everything that Gloria said. You know, we heard many Republican members say, "Why are we doing this? There's only 7 days left. It's vindictive. It's all about Trump." Not really. It's about reestablishing norms in our democracy. It's about standing up and saying, no, this is not acceptable. We will not accept a president inciting an insurrection against the government, against the Capitol, putting people's lives in jeopardy. And I think that is really important. The fact that 10 Republicans stood up is meaningful. I know there, some people may be disappointed about that number, and you'd think it would be more, given the fact that many of those Republicans were potential victims of this assault. The Vice President of the United States was a target of this result.